Hi, this is Matt Minton.
And I'm Matt's brother, Rob Minton.
We are Minton Brothers Vintage. We are starting a YouTube channel. The purpose of the channel for us is we are vintage guitar and amp junkies. We're old musicians. We're in our 50s now. We've been out of the trying to be a musician game for 25 years. And, we've focused on our careers and our families. But we've never gotten away from our love of music, guitars, guitar playing, tube amps, and vintage guitars. So purpose of our channel really is just to share some of the stuff that we've collected over the years. We want to show you different guitar and amp combinations. We've got some high-end stuff. There's some plexis and what I consider high-end amps, but we've got a lot of stuff that's not necessarily the most high-end, but is really killer. And we want to share some of that. And I also make and restore guitars. I want to share some tips and some common sense things that I think could benefit people. So with that said, our first installment is going to be about this amp right here. We call it the I.O.U. amp, and it's a 71 Marshall Super Lead. That's been heavily modified, and we can just start right at the beginning of this head where my brother got it and its story.
So this Super Lead I found on Facebook Marketplace in Michigan, and it was advertised as a Marshall mod. And when I first looked at it, I thought, wow, how could you really go wrong at the price I paid for it? So I asked the owner to send me a video clip of it because I knew it was going to be a long drive and I wanted to hear it. And he sent me a video clip, and over that it sounded really good. It was good enough that I said, well, you know what? I'll take it and I'll meet you halfway if you'll do that. So I bought it without even hearing it. And I met him halfway, made a midnight run for it. And I got it. I could tell by the condition it was in. It was a fair deal, no matter what. And then the real story begins as I got it home, and I started to closely look at the amp. And the first thing I noticed was it had black spray paint on the sides of it, and it was covering something up. So the next day when my son came to work, I took the amp out to the shop, and I had him clean the black spray paint off with carb cleaner and a rag. Well, when he started to clean it, all of a sudden a logo that was stenciled in there popped out at me, and it was bright white. It looked perfect condition, and it said I.O.U. And I mean, I'm a little ashamed to say it, but I wasn't sure who that was at that time. And I said, well, go ahead and get it off there, Cameron. And he kept cleaning it with carb cleaner, and I started to walk towards the house, and I thought, I'm going to Google who I.O.U. is. And as soon as I did, Alan Holdsworth pops up. And I'm like, Alan Holdsworth? I turned around and ran into the shop, and I said, stop. And he had already cleaned a lot of it off, so it was duller, but you can still see clearly what it was. And we stopped right there. I then, I was kind of like, wow, I mean, that means something, and it's a mod amp, a Super Lead, which is always, any early 70s Super Lead, I'd take as many as I can find for the price I paid. And so we stopped. We got the amp back down into the house, and that's when my brother and I spent a little time playing with it and plugging it in. And, it was a good Marshall mod amp at first. And then we started to really, tweak some knobs, and we decided, man, this might be the best Marshall we've got. So it makes some great Marshall tones, some of them that I've never even heard before. but it just has like, it can clean out. It can have a nice clean tone. It can have a good classic rock sound. Or what it does more than anything that I've never heard a Marshall do is it's got a really, really a feedback that almost sounds like an organ. It's a low frequency that makes the amp sound, a different feedback, especially like with a 335. But with a high gain, it's got these crazy feedbacks that it does. And, of course, with a really sweet tone. So we then knew, this amp's special. And, of course, we took it apart. We looked at the inside of it. And there is so much mod work inside of there. And I've seen some mod Marshalls. But this thing's got a lot of work. So, we didn't know anything where, who did it. If it even was Alan Holdsworth amp, we really didn't know much about it. So, we're definitely intrigued. And, so that took us to the Marshall forums. And, we got up on like the Marshall mod page, and we took some pictures. I took some pictures of the I.O.U. logo, and I've got, from back in California days, I've got like his flyers where it's got that same exact I.O.U. logo on it, some stuff like that, and I posted it on the forums. And I told my brother, I said, look, these forums, man, these people know what they're talking about. I think we're going to get some answers to some of our questions. So we went to bed that night. It was like a Sunday night, and he was staying over. And we get up first thing in the morning, and I jump on Facebook, and it wasn't even 14 hours later. The first thing that I read is, hey, I built that amp 50 years ago. And I just looked at Matt and I cracked up. I said, I told you. I said, these people. And at that point, I didn't even look to see who it was. It just said, I built that amp 50 years ago. So, that led me to looking into who it was. Well, it was Bruce Egnater. And, that was 50 years ago in, like, say, 1975. He had just gotten out of engineering school. And at that point, there wasn't a bunch of people modding Marshalls, so my hat's off to him.
Not like this.
Yeah, not like this.
Yeah, maybe a master volume or something, but not.
Yeah, not the work in here. And I will show pictures of it, after we show some different guitars being played through it. And when we play guitars through it, they're going to be standard vintage instruments, but we're going to try to leave the tone settings about where they, always the same. We'll just change the gain for a different, riff or whatever to show that this amp can clean out. It can give you the classic rock tone, or it can, it can go into full shred mode, and we'll show that organ tone that I'm talking about. So really, that is the purpose of we've been talking about it for a while, but we do have a lot of cool old amps and guitars, and we want to show some people what different vintage guitars sound like through vintage tube amplifiers. And, that's really where I stand on this. So do you have anything else, Matt?
Yeah, we'll give you a quick tour of the amp. You had the amp for a couple of years before we really reached out. We've played it as much as we play, which is not real frequent, but it is clearly a killer amp. We don't know Bruce. Rob found out about, Bruce making it in 1975 from the forum. There's been a little bit of correspondence back and forth. This is, we just wanted to give you a quick tour of it and then play some different guitars through it. We wanted to show you that not all Marshall mod amps need to sound, just like way overdriven and tons of distortion. There's really something for everybody here. It's got some really sweet sounds when you, dial down the distortion. And, we're kind of doing, basically, we're going to do a few different guitars through all the same amp settings. We're not going to touch the amp settings. We're going to call that like, low distortion, you know, moderate distortion.
More clean.
Yep, and then the only thing that we're going to change is the amount of preamp. We're not going to change the volume or any of the treble, mid, or bass controls or presence. We'll leave that alone. And then we'll go to like more distortion. We'll put that in the text so that you can see that. And then we'll put, repeat the same thing with, the most distortion. And then at the end, we'll just as a bonus, we'll go full shred because this thing does go full tilt if you want it to. But it's a really sweet amp, and we think that Bruce did an amazing job. And so we'll give you a quick tour.
One thing I do want to say is, if you're looking for great guitar players here, we're not. Years ago we really backed off of really playing guitar. But we're more about the sounds here. If you want great guitar playing, go look at, go to Tom Bukovac, go see Uncle Larry, or someone like that. There's plenty of great guitar players out there that you can watch. But what we're giving you is a taste of what the amps and guitars sound like.
So we'll do a quick look at this thing. So here's all the. You can see the controls and where they're set.
Show them the 1974 large check.
Yeah, and we're playing this through a 100-watt 1974 large check head, which is really clean, and it's awesome. Here's the, through the cabinet, and here's the stencil, I.O.U. Here's the back of the head. So obviously a extra preamp tube has been added, EL34s and 12AX7s. Not super crazy about the extension cord, power cord. Somebody needed a longer one, and I'm not even saying Bruce did that. This is an old mod, and other people may have done more mods on this along the way. So I don't know exactly what Bruce did or didn't do, but I think Bruce really did the bulk of this. I'll tell you one thing right here is this killer impedance selector. It's a 3-way rotary switch with a chicken head knob, and that's just miles better than the old impedance selectors that fall out. And so other than that, we got an effects loop, and there's Bruce's sticker, the Natech Limited, back to Berkeley, Michigan. So we've got pictures of the inside of the chassis and some of the mods, and we'll share that. But we just think that Bruce did a really good job on this, and it's killer. There's the other logo. And it goes without saying that he put the master volume right here where the polarity switch was.
One other thing that we should note is the fact that it came with a small check slant cabinet. And with that small check, we've seen pictures of Alan Holdsworth who had the small check cabinet on its side, which really to me is brilliant. I've played in a lot of different clubs and a lot of different stages, but to turn a cabinet aslant on its side, you can directionally point it towards your side of the stage. And I have seen a couple people through the years that have done that. But he every time we saw pictures of it, and we did see him with super leads, or at least one in the back, he had it on its side. And the small check cabinet that I still have, it has scrapes on the side of it where it had been sitting on the side.
That same side.
Yeah, on that same side. So, we don't know for sure that this was Alan's head. We do know that Bruce said on the forum he did not build it for Alan. So if he did get it, he got it from somebody else. But all the, everything points in the right direction that it probably was his. And, Matt, you were saying about
it only makes common sense that
he sold stuff.
That this was Alan's head, but we don't have any documentation to prove it. And it's okay because we're not trying to sell the head. If somebody does have any information or knows about it or remembers the head, an old tech or somebody that has that information, we love it, and we love to put that documentation provenance together with it. But it's a keeper for us. It's in the keeper pile, and it's not going anywhere. We're not looking to sell it. So we can't prove it, don't have the documentation, but it really makes sense.
Alan was known to sell his gear.
Yeah.
So he like all musicians, we have ups and downs, and when we have low times, sometimes we sell our gear, and we do know, we've read up on him where he would, if he needed an airline ticket, he would be known to sell something, even his prized possessions, like, what was it? His
the white SG.
Yeah, his white.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of you can read up on it. Plenty of stuff about how it's probably why he called his band I.O.U, because he probably had to do a lot of IOUs to get to the gig and to fly over here, and then he'd do the gig, and then he'd sell his. I think he said he sold his white SG to get a plane ticket to go home at one point.
And we've both seen Alan Holdsworth. I've just never seen the I.O.U, and that's why I really didn't know. Again, man, I was kind of surprised I didn't know who I.O.U was, but maybe some of you don't either.
Yeah, I saw him at the Newport, I think my senior year of high school.
Yeah, we live in Ohio.
We just got to say that, while that was not necessarily my main type of music that I listen to, Alan Holdsworth is obviously just a total phenom that, they broke the mold with, and, so we just can't say enough good things about him as far as the respect and reverence for Alan Holdsworth and
Bruce Agnator.
We could see, though, even though we know Bruce, we know that Alan, there's a lot of writing about him favoring clean amps, and we know he used Music Man amps and
Lab Series.
Yeah, Lab Series and all different kinds of ones, and probably, frankly, anything he could get free at the time that he could get a reasonable tone with. But I can tell you, you can get killer clean sounds out of this thing, and you can even get that octave high feedback when it's clean. And
I think we've heard a couple of songs from him where it kind of sounded like that.
So it's possible, it's possible that this amp was used to record. But either way, no proof, no documentation, but we think it's really cool. And more importantly, I'm 53. I've been around guitars and amps and music since I was, about 7 years old, started playing guitar at 8. And for sure, this thing that it does, this low octave feedback that kind of sounds like John Lord's organ, I've never heard any amp. And we've had plenty of mod amps come through, our hands. Rob, in Hollywood, lived right upstairs from Frank Levi and spent a lot of time with Frank and used to test out all of Frank's amps that he worked on, and he'd bring them upstairs because Rob had a good Marshall 412 cabinet and a Les Paul.
That was in the late 80s.
Yeah, so we're fairly experienced with mod amps, and neither one of us have ever heard the low octave thing. So we'll demonstrate that later, and just wanted to share it with you.
That's what our channel's going to be all about, so look forward to seeing some really cool combinations.
Thank you.